Matthew chapter 17, verses 14 to 23. Jesus heals the lunatic boy. And we are going to feature the prepositions again in this video. And as you can see from our screen, we have a split screen. On the left are the prepositions, and on the right is the section we are going through with all the prepositions highlighted in cyan. So first I think I want to go through these prepositions to explain them, and then we'll go through the text as it is. So the first preposition is pros. And pros is with the accusative, tone, oklon. This is tone is an accusative article. So pros with the accusative, so we go over to the chart and we look for pros. There's the number 3 there. My eyesight's failing, sorry. So now we see that with the 3, it's a possibility. It could be with the genitive, dative, or accusative, and it's with the accusative, and these are all the possible translations you could use. So, of their coming to the multitude, and in the accusative. So we see here pros in the accusative to, against, fronting, facing, towards, between, so forth. Next preposition is east. We have it twice in verse 15. The first and the second are both with the accusative, and they are in tow. And we look up east, find out if it's which one of these it is, and it's with the first one, so it's always with the accusative, and it has to do with into, with the location, against, a goal, and you can read all of these possible words. The next preposition is meta, and they abbreviate it with meth when there's a vowel afterwards and it takes out the ah, so meth imon. So you would say it methimon is one word. And meta is with the genitive. Imon is genitive plural. So it's with the genitive, meta. So we find meta, and there it is. Now it's under the 3 designation. It could be genitive, dative, or accusative, and we have this as in the genitive, so it's with, among, together. And I shall be with you. Now all these things I'm just showing you what the prepositions are, how they work. They're tied to cases. Now this is why they call them preposition, and supposedly it has something to do with an object around, on top of, so forth. But as you see, it's way more than that. In Machen's Grammar, which we have a link down below, you can go to Machen's Grammar, I believe it's page 48, where it has prepositions, sort of explains them all. But for a person to remember all of these, you don't have to. All you have to have is our analytical lexicon, and look it up, and you'll find out what the preposition is, first, second, or third. It's almost one of these words that you need to learn just by usage of it and reading it all the time, because prepositions appear all the time. You can make a list and go over this and see what it is, and I'm sure you'll put these into your memory just because of the repetition. So apo is our next, actually op, but apo, you see here apo follows with the consonant T, but if it's followed with the vowel, then they deleted it, so it's op of 2. So that's how it would be pronounced, op of 2. And this would be with the genitive as the second apo is. And you see it, apo only has the genitive, and it's from or because of. Can sort of be either one. It depends on the context. So from that hour, and from, and the demon came forth from, it could be from out of him, from out of that hour. So that's apo. And then it continues on down to kata, which is abbreviated to kat because it's followed by a vowel, iota. So kat. Idion is accusative. So kata in the accusative, and that's the second one with two possibilities, genitive and accusative. If it's accusative, then it's according to, in front of, during, in. There's the in. So you have to kind of figure it out from the English which word would fit best for these prepositions. That's the way I find it. I don't really go through and look these all up because why do I need to know? All I have to remember is kata is a preposition, and it's pretty much, you can see what it is. And the disciples having come forth to Jesus, kata, private, in private, what else would it be? It wouldn't be according to private or in front of private, down private, following or after, but during, but in private. So the context kind of shows what the English word should be. Our next one is thea in verse 20. And thea is with the accusative. Tin, apistion, is accusative. And the a is with two possibilities, genitive and accusative, and this is accusative. So it is through, over, on account of, by the fault, because of, is what I have here for thea, because of. Then Jesus said to them, because of your unbelief. It wouldn't be through or over, on account of is another possibility. You could say on account of your unbelief. Then we continue down to n in verse 21, and we see that is always with the dative, could be in or by, and it's right here in the dative. In or by means of, near, and they're returning in T Galilea, into, or in Galilee, or unto a Galilee, or near to Galilee. And east is into in verse 22, and that's with the accusative. So we'll look for east. Well, we went through that one earlier at the beginning. So east with the accusative is the only possibility, and so it's into is the first one. So those are all of the prepositions for this section. And as I mentioned, you can go to Machen's grammar, which is linked in our site right here below on the comment section, or whatever you want to call the description section, and look it up there and get more information if you really want to. Now it begins, ke elthon ton av ton, pros ton oklon, and of their coming to the multitude. So all these people came to them as they came down from Mount Meron, and they're by Capernaum. And it says people come from Capernaum in verse 24. It says, prosilthon avto anthropos. There came forward to him a man. Goni peton avto kelegon, kneeling to him and saying, Kyrie eleison mu ton ion oti seliniazete. Oh Lord, show mercy on my son, for he acts lunatic. Now, lunatic is not a word normally used anymore. You don't call a person a lunatic. It's considered bad taste or whatever. But it's tied into the moon. The word 4583 is seliniazete. Selene is the moon. Moon, we have the luna, is in the Latin, I believe, and lunatic. Moonstruck was another English term for a person that was like this, and they're acting like a lunatic. Now the father knows to come to somebody that can help him, and that would be Jesus, but unfortunately Jesus wasn't there, so these other people were his only hope. And this person that's acting lunatic, I have a little bit of experience because I have a license, it's way expired, but a psychiatric technician, state of California, back in the early 60s. I worked at the mental hospital, and people were this described as this boy. And we didn't say that he had a demon. That wasn't used at that time because the psychiatry wouldn't allow you to use that term, sort of woke, as we call it today. But demonized, demon-possessed of some sort, and I saw all sorts of people in that hospital that fit that description perfectly. They were just not in control anymore of their senses, harming themselves. I could write a book on all the things that I saw, but I can relate to here. So this man has a son who acts as lunatic, and I feel sorry for the person because when a person gets to that point, there's not a whole lot a person can do. Psychiatrists could try to sit them down, but they were so messed up. I believe the psychologists were more messed up than the patients at the hospital. Anyway, it continues, ke kakos paski, and he suffers badly. It's bad off. And then he continues, he says, Polakis gar pipti is topir, ke polakis is to idor. And he falls into the fire and often into the water. And I think I've mentioned before how I was working there and they left the back door open. And one man went out and walked into the water at the golf course right next to the hospital and drowned. Ke prosinica avton tis mathites su, and I brought him to your disciples. Now this was the ones that were left because Jesus went up with James, John, and Peter. Ke uk idinithisan avton therapevse, and they were not able to cure him. Therapeutics comes from this word right here. They weren't able to do anything. And as I said, these psychologists weren't able to heal the people either. It can be dangerous. A little bit of knowledge can be dangerous, especially if you're dealing with people that have a problem. The sons of Sceva came, and they went in to take care of, get rid of this demons. And the demon says, Paul I know, Jesus I know, but who are you? And he jumps on these 7 brothers and tears all their clothes off, and they run out naked. These people had uncanny strength. Some of them did, not all of them. But when they needed it, it was like, whoa. They are very powerful and scary type people to be around. Really would make them mad is when it was time to go through with the pharmaceuticals, the drugs, the potions, I believe, they're psychotic potions for these people, that they wanted them. And at this time was during the beginning of the Vietnam War. There was a lot of conscientious objectors, young men, 18, 19, 20, and they would put them to work in these hospitals. And they would end up, because the drugs were taken off in the early 60s, marijuana, LSD, and all these things, that these people like me, the psychiatric technicians, were putting fake pills and taking the real ones for themselves or to sell them or take them in a party and so forth. But these patients knew if they wasn't getting the right pharmaceutical. So they were lunatic, but they weren't. They knew if it was something that they wanted. And so this is the way it was. But so what does Jesus do? It says, Apokrythis the o Isus Epen, then responding, Jesus said, O genea apistos ke diastrameni, O unbelieving and perverted generation. Unbelieving is the word that we're going to feature. I said at the beginning it was lunatic, but it actually is unbelieving. 571. Unbelieving and perverted generation. I believe it's still around today. Eos tote esome methimon. Until when shall I be with you? And we see in John 20:27, it says, so then, Jesus says to Thomas, bring your finger here and behold my hands, and your hand, put it in my side, and be not unbelieving, but believing. So Jesus wants us to be believing, but he's calling them an unbelieving generation. Now, is he talking about the disciples who couldn't heal them, or is he talking about the people that brought the person to the disciples? I've always fought with that one, trying to figure out exactly which one he's relating to. A generation would be everybody that fits, I suppose, of the unbelievers and that are perverted. So if the shoe fits, wear it, I suppose. Until when shall I be with you? He was like, oh man, God, get me out of here. These people are too much. They don't understand anything, sort of what he's saying here. Words I'm putting into it, of course. Unbelieving people or spouses, in 1 Corinthians 7, verses 12 to 15, it talks about the unbelieving spouses. In 1 Kings 10:27, it talks about going to eat with unbelieving ones. In 2 Corinthians 4:4, it says, in whom the God of this eon blinded the thoughts of the unbelieving, so as to not shine forth to them the illumination of the good news of the glory of the Christ, who is the image of the unseen God. So Jesus is God. He's an image, taken physical form that we can see. It's an image for us to see, but he morphed, we've seen before. He's changed other places. He's God coming into a way that man can see it somehow with light. So how long will I have to endure here? Bring him to me. Ferete me, avton ode. Ferete me. It's all one word because the two accents are on this one here. Bring him to me. Ke epitimison avto. And Jesus reproached him. Jesus reproached him. Ke exilthen apavtu to daemonion. And the demon came forth from him. Jesus had the power to cast out the demon. Ke etherapevthi opes apo tis oras akinis. And the child was cured from that hour. Immediately it came forth, or right away from that hour. In verse 19, tote proselthontas imathite to isu kat idian ipan. And then the disciples, having come to Jesus in private, said, well, viati imis uk idinithimen ekvalin avto. Why were we not able to cast it out? Then Jesus says, O they Isus ipen avtis, said to them, Via tin apistian imon, because of your unbelief. Then it says, Amin gar lego imin, and ekete pistin os kokon sinapios, erite to ori tuto, and you would say to this mountain, metavithi, and tevthen aki ke metavithite, be moved over from here to there, and it will cross over. Ke uden adinatisi imin, and then nothing will be impossible to you. Okay, now what about us? Unbelief versus belief. Nothing will be impossible to you. Can I raise myself from the dead? Can you raise yourself from the dead? If nothing is going to be impossible to you, and if you have belief, and you can raise yourself from the dead, Jesus did because he had belief. He believed in a way that we don't. And basically what he's showing is we don't have belief. We have a little bit of belief. He says, oh, you of little belief. A small belief, a trusting in Jesus is another word. Trust and belief. We don't have the kind of belief that Jesus does. He went to the cross, died, and rose up from the dead. In verse 21, tuto de to genos uk ekporevite, imi in prosevki ke nistia. But this kind, the demon person, demonized, does not go forth except by prayer and fasting. So going forth would be the demon inside, not the person, not the boy or the father. So this kind does not go forth except by prayer and fasting. So basically, he's saying that there is something we can do in alleviating the problem by prayer and fasting. If somebody we know that we love fits the description of the demonized person, praying and fasting is what Jesus says that we need to do. And then in verse 22 continues and it says, Anastraphomenon they avton enti Galilee, and of their returning into Galilee, where they had come from Mount Meron, Jesus epen avtis o Jesus, Jesus said to them, Meli o eos to anthropu paradidoson is hieros anthropon. The Son of Man is about to be delivered up into the hands of men. Ke apokatinosen avton, ke ti triti imera egerthisate, and they will kill him, and in the third day he will be raised up. Now, it's interesting that when Jesus was arrested and all the disciples fled, they didn't really have the belief that Jesus would rise up, even though he has told them many times, he will be raised up. So their belief was shown by their not believing him being raised up. They fled. Now, oddly enough, that the Pharisees, when they went to Pontius Pilate, they asked him to put a guard in front of the tomb because this crazy man said that he was going to rise in 3 days. And we don't want anything happening where somebody would come and take him and say that he's risen in 3 days. And so Pilate says, well, you have a custodial guard. You go put the guard there yourselves. And so that was what happened. The Jewish custodial guard was guarding the tomb, not the Roman soldiers, as you would see in some movies. We know that he was raised up. He did rise up. The tomb was rolled away. Angels appeared. Light radiated and all these things. And what did they do after they hear this? They fretted exceedingly. He's going to die. But they're going to kill him. They're going to kill Jesus. There was a good movie, I think it's called Thomas, and how he was in the movie doubting everything when he saw Christ die. And he was very upset over the murder of Jesus. It's an excellent movie. And then at the end, of course, appears to him and tells him not to have this unbelief, but to believe. Our next section is the coin in the fish.